Hi, everyone, and good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the country. This is Scott Fischetti from Geopath. I'm here with Brian Shopper from Geopath, as always.
Hello.
Hey, just want to say thank you and welcome. There are definitely a lot of people joining us today, and we're really excited. So, as you've probably been able to tell from the newsletters we've been sending out, we're taking a new tack today. We're breaking down the webinars that we've been doing over the past year. And we're going to start breaking them out into foundational levels and advanced levels. So with the foundational levels, just to give the lay of the land here, what we'll typically do moving forward is, really focus in on the Insight Suite itself and really talk about how to use the Insight Suite, how to use the tool itself, and really talk about any updates to it and how to use those updates. Whereas in the advanced session, we'll be more focused in on a use case and really talking about that use case and how can you use the Insight Suite to create value for clients today? How can you answer specific questions for clients? So really in the actual application of the Insight Suite and the data in the Insight Suite. And that's what tomorrow's session will be about. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this session today. One thing I want to make note of that I always forget to do, and I do apologize, please ask us questions throughout the session. We're here and want to make this valuable for all of you guys listening in today. So ask questions. We'll try to stop in the moment and answer as many of them as we can so it's relevant to when the question's being asked. So we'll do our best with that. We may not be able to get to all of the questions, but we'll do our best to get to them all as we can. So just our goal for today, just to reiterate, we're going to walk through and give everybody a kind of a lay of the land, so to speak, of the Insight Suite, because again, I'm guessing there's a lot of you who haven't yet had a chance to log into or explore with the Insight Suite. So that's what we want today to be about. We want everybody to feel comfortable and understand just what it looks like, how to use it, how to just initially start to gather data out of the Insight Suite. And Brian's going to do a walkthrough of that for everyone, and we'll use that. And so that's how we'll start to get to know the workflows and how to evaluate audience metrics against the inventory that we're filtering. So as we're doing the walkthrough, we'll do that and show you how to do that. And so just a friendly reminder, so that the Insight Suite is still in beta, with the goal of it coming out of beta at the end of September, so for October 1. But during that time, it is still beta, and so the impression data is still for non-commercial use. So I always want to make that caveat. And as you, after this session, as you hopefully are excited and go in and explore the inventory, the Insight Suite, please explore and provide feedback. It's really helpful and critical for us because we do make a lot of changes based on the feedback from our members. So if you're in there and something isn't working like you think it should, or you have a great idea, click the feedback button, and Brian will show you where that is when we get to there, and really help us make the Insight Suite better. So again, knowing that there's probably a lot of people who haven't had a chance to jump into the Insight Suite, one of the key things to think about, and the way we often talk about it, is it was developed using an audience-first approach. And you'll see when we're in there how important audience is and how by choosing different audiences really helps show a different selection of inventory and really helps us think about and consider inventory differently. So right now, today, at this moment, there's more than 8,000 different audiences available based on demographics, behavioral profiles, or psychographic profiles. But that's one of the key talking points about the Insight Suite, and one of the key pillars as we were developing the Insight Suite, really having this audience-first approach. So the other thing that we're going to do with every session before we jump into the actual walkthrough of the Insight Suite is really show you and talk about what has changed since the last time we've had these sessions. So we've been doing these sessions every month since last May, twice a month, really talking through and making sure people had the opportunity to ask questions and see what's going on with the Insight Suite. And part of that is really tracking what's changing. So I'm going to walk through the quick updates that have happened since the last month. So there was a new release that came out last Monday ahead of the conference, or last Sunday night, the Sunday before the conference. And so I want to just talk through some of the updates that occurred. So there are a number of changes and upgrades to the workspace. And again, we'll walk through what that is when we get there. But now it's a lot easier to use and work through the workspace. There's additional functions, so you can see as you might scroll over here and view your project, you can see things such as view, copy, delete, just by hovering the project. There were features that were there, but now they're a little more user-friendly and easier to use. In terms of when you are setting up new projects in Workspace, you can easily edit the project name and description and add tags to it all in one space, rather than previously you would have had to do that in three different clicks. And then you can also use to build the scenarios and multiple scenarios on a project, and also easily add your first project. It prompts you to say, add your first scenario here. This will all, as the tool becomes more and more the tool of the industry, this area will be more and more important over time. Today we will probably show you and talk about this, but we won't spend a ton of time in the workspace. In future sessions, as we do these foundational sessions, we'll really focus them in on specific parts of the Insight Suite and specific tasks on the Insight Suite. But again, like I said, today it's going to be more of a general lay of the land of the Insight Suite. So this last update to the workspace is one nice ease of use aspect is, instead of having to scroll through the different markets in a scenario, you can just type it in and it will autofill for you as well. Another key improvement, and this is in the Explore module, which we will be in and we've seen a lot of today, is how the media types are laid out. And previously there was the non-digital aspect and digital aspect filters have been taken away, but now they're back and restored. And you can also have it's easier to now look as in subfolders, so you see freestanding and all the different sub media types underneath each of the types of the broader freestanding furniture and exterior walls. So again, Brian will talk through this as we get through the session. Also, another thing that's come back from that was taken away but is now back, the plan IDs have been restored to the right rail. And again, this will all make sense as we get into the tool. Again, if you haven't logged in, this probably is all new to you, but you'll see as we get into the tool. Also, additional icons to customize the map. So you can create custom maps that you can export for your clients or advertisers, whoever you are working with. And now there's more customization available. So different icons can be used to represent different things, such as store locations or different types of inventory. You can use different icons for that. And previously you can always color code them, but now you can create and choose multiple different icons for that, which is exciting. And again, we'll show you how you can create a quick map for your clients and export that as well today. And then, as well, you can also now in the mapping area label inventory, and this was a big ask, and I think something that a lot of people are going to be really excited about. So those are just some of the changes, some of the highlights of what's changed since the last session. Definitely want to just jump in and take a look. Before we do that, I just want to pause, see if there's any questions.
Oh, somebody said they're having a little trouble hearing us with the. We'll just move a little closer to this.
Apologies.
But yeah, no other questions so far.
Okay, and if apologies about the audio. If you are having that throughout the session, please let us know, and we'll do our best to try to adjust how we're pushing the audio through.
Yeah, we did get a question just now. Can you search by operator? We'll get through all that. We
definitely
can do all that and much more.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's a great segue into let's jump into the Insight Suite and go through it.
Sorry, excuse us while we're switching chairs real quick. So let me just pull up my browser. All right, so can everybody see that? I hope everybody can see that okay. So this is the Insight Suite. Right now we're in the Explore module, and this is the general landing page. When you log into the Insight Suite, if this is your first time, this is what you can expect to see right here. So I'm going to just talk through a couple things around the sort of edges and user interface before we really get into anything. I'm going to come over here to this home section, and this just gives an overview of what each of the different modules are. So Scott was just talking about Workspace and how there have been some updates to the Workspace module. And that's planning and building scenarios and running campaigns. And as Scott said, once this comes out of beta, this will be sort of a more fully realized and more fully used tool. Right now, there's sort of aspects of different tools that we still use for this. Then the next module, Explore, that's where you'll spend a majority of your time. 99% of our time today is going to be spent in the Explore module. So we'll go through all that. That's the actual visual aspect and mapping out inventory and things like that. Places is points of interest. This is still in beta right now, this module itself. Improving all the time. The past couple of releases made some really big improvements to this. And this is just, finding points of interest, restaurants, different places to actually map out in relation to inventory. And we'll go through and we'll use that as well. And then the reports section is coming soon, and that's sort of post-campaign analytics and things like that. So I'm going to go back to the Explore module, which is where we just were before we came into this. And I'm going to just sort of talk our way through the top bar here. So from left to right, we have a series of different tabs that you can use to filter out your inventory, add audiences, and different things like that. And there's a lot of different things that we can do. So I'm going to talk about them at a high level first, and then we'll go through and do sort of a scenario that I've built out. So define target, there are two parts of define target. Select audience, which is your demographics, your behavioral, your psychographics, all that is in the select audience. And then assign market right now is at the DMA level. So we're basically setting our parameters for the DMA itself is where we're sort of measuring all the metrics against, and it eliminates the inventory outside of that DMA. Filter inventory is exactly what it sounds like. You can filter out for different inventory pieces in a really rich category of ways. So you can see here there's about 6 different categories here, just different ways that you can filter for inventory. So by media type, by attributes, so this is orientation and size, operators, as somebody asked earlier, and I'll go through all of this. Location, this is, so say you don't want to look at a DMA as a whole, you could look at a county or a zip code or things like that, just different geographies. If you have a specific group of IDs that you want to take a look at, you can just paste those right in here from either an email or an Excel sheet, and this will parse it out for you, either as a geopath ID or you can do the plant IDs right here. And then thresholds, this is some different campaign delivery metrics, and this will be expanded as the tool keeps expanding. And then load saved inventory sets. One of my favorite features in the tool, you can actually save a group of inventory that you have netted down to in the past and call it up anytime you need it. So say you were working on something and you close down the browser, you get sidetracked. If you saved it, you can just pull it back up and you're right back where you left off. So that's something we'll dive into in a little bit. Layers and display options is map level options. So loading in things that we've saved, we can color code things, we can add custom logos and text, and then that's where we can use that to export the different kind of thing. And this is turning on or off map features. And then from here we can print the view that we made as a PDF. So again, all this is stuff that we will talk through just at a high level so you have an understanding of what each of these do.
So Brian, there's one question that came in,
sure.
And it's related to location and geography. So will we be able to choose a CBSA as a location? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, you can actually do that now.
And you can get much more granular than that. Ultimately, when you're defining the target, you'll define the DMA area, but then within that, you'll start to be able to get other locations. So CBSAs, zip code level, and even more granular than that, ultimately be able to build custom geographies. Some of that functionality is currently suppressed, but you definitely will be able to choose a CBSA as a location. I just also want to check, I did get one more note, and I'm not sure when it came in, about the sound. So is anybody else still having trouble with the sound? Cool, great. I got a couple no's. Great, thank you. Just please let us know again, because we want to make sure you guys are hearing what we're saying. So sorry about that.
One more thing before we actually dive into our example. I want everybody to take a look over here on the right-hand side. these are just some overview metrics that you'll see change as you start to filter out inventory and change your audience and change your area. The TRPs, the target composition index, and then total impressions and target impressions. All of these numbers are going to change as you filter out your inventory. But for right now, this is showing across the US about 420,000 different pieces of inventory that we audit. This is the overall metric for all of that. So again, this is all going to change as we go through. But yeah, let's just jump right into an example. So as I was going through and I was sort of preparing for this, I was trying to think of a couple things to do. And I'm actually taking a trip to Seattle in about a month. So I figured let's do Seattle as an example market. I don't know if I've done Seattle on one of the webinars before, so it might be a fun one to do. So I'm going to go define target and then assign market. And here, these are at the DMA level again. You can either scroll or you can search Seattle, Tacoma, apply. And as we're doing that, we'll see that all of the inventory not in that DMA is going to get filtered out. So now we see this bubble here for the inventory in the market, which is about 2,500 different pieces of inventory. So now we're zoomed into this market, and this is the inventory in this market. Had we zoomed in a little bit earlier, actually if we zoom out a little bit further, you'll see there, when you're zoomed out to a certain level, you see this teal color for all the different pieces of inventory. But when you start to get closer and more specific, you get these different colors. And so if you click the key here, it'll show you what these different inventory types are. So orange bulletins, yellow posters, street furniture down here is this green color, and then walls and murals. If you look closely, you can see a couple sort of in the central Seattle area. There's some walls and murals up there. As we get closer, you'll actually see that these icons change even further. But before we even do that, I just want to net it down a little bit more. So right now we're looking at all of the inventory in the DMA. Our target right now is persons 0+. You can see it over here and actually here at the bottom. You'll always know what your audience is and what market you're looking in because you have these pills in the bottom, unless you turn them off, but you have these pills in the bottom that show you what's currently on your map. And because our current audience is persons 0+, that's the total and that's also our target. We haven't applied another audience onto this, so our target is the same as our total. But once we apply a different audience, you'll see that our target audience is a subset of the total. So we're going to go back to define target, and where we just did assign market, we're going to come to select audience. And before I pick, there's a couple different categories in here of different audiences. So population is census level and household profiles. So within this, it's things about income, people in the household, marriage status, things like that. And then all the demographic categories that you would expect to see, different age breakdowns, ethnicity breakdowns, and then some behaviors. This is mostly about employment and things like that.
One thing I always think is interesting with the behaviors, though, Brian, is the language.
Language in the home.
This often, comes into play if you're in an area that has a high population of non-English speakers. So again, you can really see here how there's different, you can look for and filter for inventory that is efficient at reaching people that speak Spanish in the home or speak a different language in the home. So I think while I think the consumer profiles are really interesting as well, there's some interesting things in the population areas.
Absolutely. And a lot of these actually, in one of our most recent updates, there was a whole slew of new audiences, I think almost quadrupling the amount of audience variables that we had in here. So there's always new stuff to discover. Every time I look in here, I find interesting new ones. So before I go to consumer profiles, I want to just talk about the Prism Premier segments. Through our data partners at Claritas, we have access to their Prism Premier product, which is these pre-segmented audience groups. Everyone in the US is divided down into one of these 68 audience groups. And so if you have a broad idea of the kind of people that you want to target, they're roughly this age range, roughly with this income, they kind of like these activities, you can do that. You can find these people using these kind of things. Say you don't have a specific thing that you're looking for, but some of these names are a little funny. I don't necessarily know what Country Squires is if I'm looking at that. And if you find yourself asking questions like that, you come over here to the feedback button. This is a great place to search for help, but to also if you find something you have a question about, you can contact us through this. But I'm just going to search for country squires because I want to see what that is. 05 country squires. And so it pulls up this little article we have about who these people are and just a little bit about, the percent of US population, the income range, about the age range, and just some things like that. And for each of the 68 that are in here, there's a little article like this. So if you ever have questions about something, always come and check in this feedback button first and just see if you can source it out that way. So before I mentioned the consumer profiles, let's go back over to that. This is where we have a lot of the behavioral, the consumer spending, the attitudinal demographics. And so there's a really, really large number in here. And we have them broken down into a really diverse group of categories, everything from, media consumption to transportation to retail spending is somewhere down here. Yeah, retail shopping, travel. There's this huge number in here. And so if you don't really know what you're looking for, a great place to start, you could just search or you could explore the different categories. But since we're in Seattle, I had the idea, let's look at people who are organic food eaters. I want to take a look for that specifically. So I'm just going to search organic. And there's a couple that pop up. So people often use organic beauty products. They eat organic foods regularly, buy organic foods on a regular basis. Let's do that one. We want to get actual customers. So I'm going to hit apply and keep an eye on the target impressions and these metrics over here as I hit apply. So you can see here our target impressions, and these are on a weekly basis. 57 million target impressions for this audience target in a given week out of the 208 million total impressions. Target comp percentage of 28%. So 28% of this market are people who eat organic foods regularly. 28%
of the impressions.
Of the impressions generated come from people who are organic food buyers. So let's take a look more specifically. So we've got all of the inventory in the DMA still. Let's net it down a little bit. So I'm going to come here to filter inventory. We've got a location filter on just because we have a DMA selected. Let's do some media types. I want to do just posters. So I'm going to go freestanding and then posters here. And I want to do transit shelters, which are in furniture. And then we will also do all the walls that are in the market because I wanted to see those as well. So I'm going to hit apply. We'll see should net this down. Okay, so now we're just looking at the different inventory types that I wanted to take a look at. And just for the sake of curiosity, let's zoom in down here to this area where these transit shelters are. And earlier I had mentioned that the closer you get, the icons actually change. So you can see they've kind of grayed out. Now we're actually seeing directionality. So for certain ones of these, like this one, for example, this is a west facing. This one here is a north-south facing. And if for each individual unit, if you click on it, every single unit in here has a front of the card like this with some general statistics about it and what it is and where it is. But then on the back side, there are a little bit more detailed information like this. So again, similar metrics about the characteristics itself. But if we take a look, we can see sort of the audience summary in relation to our audience target. And impressions, we can see some composition, reach frequency. One of my favorite features about this is this top zip codes feature. And so this is something that we had been able to understand for a long time, seeing, we knew that people were coming from a host of different areas and passing by certain pieces of inventory, but now we actually have the ability to look at that and to see that visualized. So I'm gonna open that up. And what we're going to do when we zoom in is we're actually going to be looking at the audience zip codes for this, zoom in with this, for this board. Get a little bit closer. So this purple ring is where the board itself is. And you can see, I'm not sure if it falls within the, it looks like it falls just on the edge of the zip code, but the zip code where it has its highest audience, it just barely falls on that edge. But interestingly enough, these zip codes up here, not along the highest, pretty low impressions. So you can actually see just around the whole market where the impressions and the audience for this board come from. And again, this is something we knew was happening, but just being able to see it laid out like this is really fascinating.
Right. Yeah, and often like when I'm traveling around talking with reps and visiting with members, you hear this, wanting the ability to tell that movement story. And so this now, and again, like Brian's saying, we always knew this was existing, but it was gut, right? But now we have the data behind it to kind of show that to advertisers and show how, just because a unit is in a zip code doesn't mean that's where it's drawing most of its audience from. And oftentimes you find it's drawing most of its audience from other zip codes. And so this is a nice way to show that. And in future sessions, we'll talk more about how you can map other things out more specifically and look at other zip codes and stuff like that. If we have time today, we can try to get to that. There was one question about, is there a way to, it's back when we were looking at the audiences, is there a way to stack audience attributes? So for example, a prism cluster with only a certain household income and things like that. So the answer is not yet. To some extent, you can do that. So there's certain attributes in the Insight Suite now that you can. So things like males 18 to 34, things like that. So certain combinations of census-based demographics you can, but not everything just yet. It definitely is on the timeline, the development timeline, someplace we want to get to, but there isn't that ability to combine the census-based with the behavioral or the prism segments just yet. So.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out and go back to what we were looking at, sort of the market as a whole. And again, remember, we have filtered out for different inventory types, but there's still a lot of inventory here, about 1,700 different pieces of inventory here. Let's net it down even further. So we have our audience selected, and again, this is people who buy organic foods on a regular basis. Let's take a look. We can compare on a couple different metrics. So I'm just going to show you some of the different things we can evaluate based on. Total impressions, target comp percentage, which is what we're going to stay at, because it helps give a better sense of the efficiency of reaching an audience. In market total impressions, there's a lot. I'm not going to read through all of them, but there are a lot of different metrics that we can evaluate the inventory against.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's really based on kind of what your client needs are. Sometimes you may want to be looking at units that have big impressions,
Mm-hmm.
so you may be looking at total impressions or target impressions, or maybe it's really a TRP-based response that you need. So again, it's just you have the capabilities in a lot of different ways to filter and ultimately sort the inventory. So think about the right side of that right rail as sorting, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the left side, and you're filtering down to the set of inventory ultimately that you need, and then ultimately you want to sort it in different ways to see what are the top 25 or top 50 or top whatever that kind of meet the needs of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so in the spirit of sorting out like that, let's take a look at, like Scott mentioned, we can do the top 50. Let's do top 50 for target comp percentage. So I just did that with these drop downs right here, and you can see this eliminated a lot of the units in the market. So let's take a look at these units here. Clustered pretty heavily right in this central Seattle area. And again, these are the top 50 target comp percentage, or top 50 based on target comp percentage for reaching this audience target. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to save these. So I want to save this as an inventory set so I can come back to this later and I can compare it with other audiences. So if you go to this drop down here, save as, you can save as a new inventory set, and then you can call it anything you want. It's really for your reference. A lot of times if you're working on multiple audiences for the same campaign, it's helpful to name them similar things so you can find them easier. But I've actually already saved this one, so I'm not going to save it again, but you can call it anything you want, and then you just save it and keep exploring. I'm gonna show everything again. I'm gonna go back to all, and let's you know, really quick before I do that, I'm a little curious about the way these are clustered here. They're all in this specific area. There's sort of none to the outside. So let's take a look with some other elements. We can add some other elements to the map and maybe give ourselves a little bit more context on the area. So I want to go to the Places module next and take a look at some of the stores in the area maybe that might be helping get those impressions or get that audience. So I'm just going to zoom over to Seattle so we can see. And the Places module is set up very similarly to the Explore module. So let's just get ourselves into the Seattle area. And these are all these purple dots here, and all these shapes are different points of interest in the area. I'm going to go find and define, and let's take a look for Whole Foods. Whole Foods, search. So this is the list of, this is nationally right now, so we're taking a look at all the Whole Foods in the US. There's a lot of different things that fall into the category of Whole Foods or came up in the search. So I'm going to deselect those and just select Whole Foods Market. And actually, while we're over here, you don't have to search for a store or a specific place like this. Say you want to find, grocery store or a wine shop or liquor store or something like that. You can do that, and it'll come up with these broad categories, and then you can go and look through based on that. So there are all these different categories that you can use as keywords as well. So let's go into this Whole Foods list, and we're going to be looking at, these are all the Whole Foods in the US. I'm going to filter it out. We'll sort by alphabet for state, so we can look at the ones near Seattle, Washington.
Right. And maybe before, as you're doing this, Brian, maybe before you leave, it'd be nice to maybe zoom back out and show everybody how you can see how they're mapped across the US as well.
Do that before. Right. So these are, this is the distribution of the Whole Foods across the whole US. It's interesting down here.
And I know we happened in this example to choose a national chain, but it is, and you could even see previously before Brian filtered for all the Whole Food chains, there were a lot of other categories that have Whole Food in their name. So you can get pretty granular and pretty narrow with if you're looking for a mom and pop shop or a sandwich shop or something that has a single location. A lot of times you can go in and find that.
Yeah, you can see that here actually.
It's not just for mapping national chains.
All these single location places here. Those will all come up as well. So we're going to go back into that, and I'm just going to sort through, and I'm going to deselect these and, just start picking some of these ones in the Seattle area. I've already done this earlier, so I'm not going to save another place set, but I'm just going to show you how you can save a place set. So say you have a couple, excuse the sirens, sorry about that, New York City. Say you have a couple places that you want to save to a place set so you can use it in your map later. I have these three selected just for now. Come down to the Save button right here and then Save as a new place set, or you could add it to an existing place set you already had, but Save as a new place set, and it works just like how you're saving inventory as a set. So you just type in the name here and you hit Save. So, and then your saved places will actually show up here. So I have a Qdoba from a different example we were doing, and then the Seattle Whole Foods that I was working with earlier. So let's bring this back into our Explore module and take a look at it in relation to the units that we were just looking at. If you remember, when we left the Explore module, the units we had were the top 50 by audience target comp percentage for organic food buyers. So that'll be our starting place. It should bring us back to that. Close, I think it's just trying to catch up with me. There we go. So here are those top 50. So I'm going to bring in the place set that we just saved. So layers and display options. And again, this is where all of your map level things are. So different sets that you've saved, you can bring them in and customize them here. So place sets and Seattle Whole Foods, and hit the over button. And if you click on this icon right here, this is where you can actually customize it. So say, this is a location you have a specific color you want to use, you can use the hexadecimal code. You can drag and create a color this way. I think Whole Foods has sort of like a dark green color, so we'll do sort of that. And let's do a pin. and I'm just going to apply that to my map. So I'll hit apply view, and those are going to populate. So these are the Whole Foods in the Seattle area. It definitely makes sense why there's a clustering of this audience target up in this area. But you know, let's compare this more specific audience target to a bit of a broader audience target. Let's say just people 18 plus. You know, which boards in the area are most efficient for getting impressions on that audience target, and let's see how that interacts and compares to this audience set we have right here, or to this inventory set we have right here. So I'm gonna just select everything again, and I'm gonna go back and change my inventory set. I'll leave the Whole Foods on here for right now. Define target, select audience, and back in the population is where the census level demographics are. So we'll go demographics, age, and 18 plus.
So when you do that, so some of the, I wanted to show that there.
Oh, do you want? I can go back. Yeah.
Yep. Can you go back and just like maybe select gender for me?
Sure.
And then to show to the question.
How to add
show the question before. So if you pick males, let's see how demographics is showing up there.
Another drop down.
So drop down, and you could add males 18 to 34 as an example. So as I said, there's a select number of these attributes that you can combine, and again, that will grow ultimately as the tool becomes more and more capable. So I'm sorry, so to go back to your 18 plus example.
Population, and we'll do demographics, age, and then I'll just do 18 plus, hit apply. And I'll bring our map out a little bit so we can see the whole market again. And again, this is filtered for the inventory types that I wanted. So we're still at that level. So we're still at target comp percentage. Let's take a look, top 50 for 18 plus. Close grouping, but different actually. The other one seemed to be more up in this northern half of this peninsula, I guess. Let's save this and let's take a look at them together. So again, save as. Over here you can save as a new inventory set and call it whatever you want. Again, I've already done this just to have it. Actually, while I'm over here, I just want to mention something quick. You can also save this to CSV. So say you want these, the audience metrics, certain ones of them we can use right now. So the index for any of the specific audiences we can use right now. The impressions, again, as Scott mentioned at the beginning, because this is still in the beta phase, the impressions are still for non-commercial use. Let's say you want to take this out and compare, you know, how does the index for this audience on this board compare to this one? You can do all that, you know, export to CSV, and do it that way. Okay, so let's pretend I've saved all this, which I have. I'm going to actually just, if you go here, I'm just going to hit none. I'm going to clear out all the inventory on the map just visually, so I'm not looking at it. And now I'm going to bring in the two different inventory sets that I saved earlier and just see how they compare with each other, both the organic food buyers and the persons 18 plus. So layers and display options, inventory sets, a huge list of them here. I think they're Seattle, yeah, here we go. Seattle organic food buyers and Seattle top 50 18 plus. Come back up here. And just like before, we can customize the color and the shape as well. So I'll give this one a light blue, or yeah, blue. And then the other one we will do sort of an orange color. Sure. All right, so let's do that. And I'm going to hit apply view. And so now we're going to be looking at these two different inventory sets on the same map in relation to the, in relation to the Whole Foods that we picked out earlier. It's just catching up with me.
So sometimes what you could do here, so he's got the different colors loaded in, and if you go to display options, you can choose how, this is where you can start to customize your map. So you may want to turn off the unselected inventory and apply that view. So then ultimately you would be just showing the inventory that you have mapped out. So So that's one way to do it at times. And then also there are other different ways to customize the map. You can choose to show the legend or not. You can, as Brian mentioned before, those pills, you can either choose to show the pills or not to show the pills. And you can add logos. You can add, if let's say this was for Whole Foods,
Sure.
you can add their brand logo in there and also customize it with text. And you can also choose if you want to show the different base maps as well. There's multiple base maps that you can click and choose. A lot of times we choose the light one here because it shows the colors a little bit better, but you may need to show a satellite view. It may be more helpful for whatever you're doing. So just want to know that there's options to further customize the map. And then ultimately when you get it to a point that you are happy with, you can export that and print it to a PDF and pull that into a PowerPoint for any presentation as well.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna actually just really quick show you how, if you want to export the map that you've made, you've got your different inventory sets and all that loaded up onto the map. So you just come here, Actions, Print View, and then Print Again, and it'll pull up your browser's print window, and here you can print it as a PDF and save it that way. And then, use that in presentations and things like that.
And you could choose whether you want it as a landscape view or a portrait view as well.
Yep.
And so I think it's showing up as a landscape view as well.
Yep.
And then you could take that and ultimately drop that into a
presentation,
presentation as needed.
Cool.
There was one question that I didn't get to earlier as we're kind of maybe finishing up a little bit here. It said, currently you can choose a location and see which zip codes are best that view the display. So which zip codes is it drawing audience for? Can you do the reverse? And this is a question we get a lot. I want to look at the zip code and know that I'm drawing audience from this zip code and which units are best at drawing audience from the zip code. Currently, the functionality isn't in the tool to do that. The capabilities are there. And again, it's probably something that is probably down the line on the development roadmap as well as the ability to map populations and things like that. We know there's some functionality that the industry wants, and we're ultimately getting there to providing that. So I do believe that is something on the ultimate roadmap that we would like to have our members be able to do. So not quite yet. It's not there yet, but eventually we'll be there. So
were there any other questions? If anybody has any, you can send them in now. If there's anything they'd like just a little bit more explanation on or anything like that.
So one thing I think is a question we get a lot of times as well too is that yes, I see that there's a lot of audiences here, but how do I know how many audiences, which audiences are there? So there is a support area too where you can go in and look at it. There's the question mark there and the feedback area. And it brings you to this tab that Brian's going to open up.
Support.geopath.io if you need to get there like that. And this is a great site just full of a lot of information on the Insight Suite if you have questions or you want to understand a little bit more about the metrics and things that you're seeing. But specifically to what Scott was mentioning, the different audiences that are in here, this is the homepage here. You go to audience measurement, and then it'll be the top link on the next page, all available audiences. And so it does break it down in other articles on the site, other pages. But here is just a big list of all the audiences that are available in the Insight Suite right now. And I'll just scroll a little bit so you can see. There's 8,000.
Because sometimes I think just seeing a list sometimes is maybe a little bit easier than hunting and pecking in the Insight Suite itself. So, and again, but that is an interesting way for audience discovery as well. So if you're trying to look for gamers, typing in games, you can see all the different types of audiences that are available in the Insight Suite for a particular area or category. Or you could come here and look at all available audiences. And similarly, if you go back one, Brian, to audience measurement, on the right side, when it goes back to there, on the right side, the market segmentation, that's where you can see a complete list, just listed all together of all the Prism segments. So again, that Claritas is a proprietary segmentation product that we have available in the tool, and it gives you all of the information on each one. So again, you can do similarly, just clicking on each of them and finding out more information. Another question came in on how recent is the data and how often does it get updated? And I'm taking that question to be around the audience data, and that is updated annually at this point. And it could be more frequently ultimately, but it is annually at this point. Another good question came in, and one I was thinking we should probably show everybody as well, and maybe go back to the Insights Suite itself. It's, can I search for billboards for just one company? And so, we took this example from just showing all the operators in a market. But if you do want to just look at a single provider, you can just look at them and just click that. And you can ultimately see here is a good example that Brian's showing now.
I'll actually
it is
show
filtering by that operators, how many units that they do have in the market. So it automatically filters for you. And you can also create a map too if you don't know where the operator has inventory. So you can use it for exploration in two ways. And that's why I like the name of this module, the Explorer, because it's essentially what you're doing. You're using this to explore inventory and filter it down and to discover the inventory that works for your needs. So if you're exploring and looking at a national level, not really sure, like, hey, where does Insight Street Media have inventory across the U.S., you can just click there and it'll create a nice little bubble map for you and show you where they have inventory across the U.S. so you can see which markets they're in. Or you can do the reverse and say, hey, I've never really worked in this market. I don't know who has inventory. And so you pick the market and discover it that way and drill down that way. And then ultimately, too, if you're looking at a single operator, you can click and do that as well. Just look at their inventory, single operator's inventory in a particular market as well. And again, if you want to go back and see how to do that, we actually did a nice use case last month in the April sessions that are posted in the Geek Out library, and I'll show you where they are before we jump off the call, where we did that specific type of example. Was a very local example, local use case, where we worked through just one operator's inventory and how did they solve the problem for a client. So that was the last month's session. So if you have time and interest, you can look at that and just see how to use the tool in that way. So again, we'll pause for a second, just see if there's any other questions. But as we're doing that, let's jump back to the deck, Brian, and just go through a few things. Oh, great. Okay. Sorry. So.
We have a question.
Yeah. So okay, good. So a bunch of questions are coming in. Oh, great. You know what? Can you?
I can go back.
Brian? Yeah, this is good. I mean, this will be fun because I think people are asking questions. We can help show them how to use it. So there's one quick question. Please show us how to search for just one unit.
Sure.
So you know what? Maybe export
one of those,
a list, and then just show how you can just copy and paste that unit number in and search for just one unit. So from your inventory set. And so while Brian is doing that, there's one question. Another question: is there any way to expand the list of zip codes for a particular unit? Ultimately, that's a good question, and I think it's related to the back of that card when Brian flips over and it says, it shows you the top 5 zip codes that it's drawing audience from. Ultimately, when you map it out, you're seeing at a high level all the zip codes that it's drawing audience from. But I think that's a good question of like, how do you kind of see ultimately the entire list of zip codes where it's drawing audience from? So that's a good question, and something I'll have to go back and ask the developers about. So that's a good question.
Okay. So
and then, sorry.
Oh yeah, I'll just do that real quick. So I went and I pulled up an inventory set, one of the ones from today, one of the Seattle organic buyer ones, and I just want to clear that out so we're looking at everything again. Basically what I did was I pulled that up and I exported it to CSV, so I had the I had geopath IDs in front of me, and also I had the plant unit IDs. But I'm just going to use geopath IDs because they're fully unique, so there's no chance of getting confused with multiple units. So let me pull that over here so we can see this as well. And this was just the export of the top 50. I'm just going to grab this first one as an example. So I'll zoom out so we can see it. So here's the whole area again. Too far. So if you go filter inventory and then specific units by ID, here's where you can paste those in. So if you have the geopath ID, you can just paste it in right like that and it'll recognize it. Plant unit ID, you can do it that way too. Let's just hit apply and you'll see exactly how that works. It'll actually validate it for you. So if you have an invalid ID, say maybe something was typed or something like that, it'll show you here. And there's that one that we were looking for right there.
Cool.
Anything else?
Yeah, so there was another question. Is there a best way to find the top 10, 20, 50 in a market without having them being clustered together, right? Because a lot of times you may be looking at a set of units, so maybe you're looking at bulletins and say, I want to look at the top 25. Well, you know what happens?
Right.
A lot of times they all might be on the same highway.
Right.
So yes, so there is a way to do that, and ultimately there's a couple different ways to do that. So you can export all the inventory like Brian did and start to do it that way. I mean, sometimes maybe some of our members have their own tools that they might want to pull this into. Or Brian, if you want to go back to the tool and look at the table view.
Yes.
And show. So right now what we've done today, we've looked at it mostly in the map view.
We get it smaller.
Yeah. So there is a table view where you can actually start to do the same thing. So Brian's going to get it back to Seattle because we've cleared out.
I'm just trying to get it down to a smaller group of units so it's more manageable to look at.
And this question is also a good question and a nice plug for the session we're going to do tomorrow, because that's ultimately what we're going to do tomorrow in the use case that we're going to work through.
Posters.
It's really from, we're going to work through a use case from an agency's perspective, and like, for example, they get back, put out an RFP, get back a couple hundred different recommended units from a bunch of different operators. How do you sift that down and create a nice geographic spread across an area? So that's one thing. If you're interested, you can join that session tomorrow, and we'll talk through a lot of that and the how-tos on a lot of that.
Okay, yeah. So I just picked an audience. I did women 18 to 34, and I'm back in the Seattle DMA, and I just did posters, just sort of to create like a base scenario. So what we could do, we have this view here on the right-hand side, but there's a second view, as Scott was saying, that we can actually use. This up arrow in the bottom left-hand corner will bring up this grid view, and once that loads, I'll drag it up so we can see it better. But this is just another way that you can actually evaluate the inventory itself. So let me drag this a little bit taller. Yeah.
And you can customize the different columns you want to view here. Again, largely it's probably based on whatever you're trying to do for your clients. So maybe it's a combination of reach, TRP, target impressions, as well as target audience index. It could be whatever combination that is. You can do that and use this to search and look for it and filter inventory that way. And as you turn units on and off, they will reappear back up in the map. So you're actually can go between the two.
Graphically.
You can go between the two and make sure you're getting a geographic distribution here as well.
Cool. I think I unclicked something I wasn't supposed to click.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that feature exists.
No, it's great to sort of have it picture in picture there. You can have the data itself and then the view, and you can sort of, like you were saying, just see how it scatters around.
Yeah. The one other last question that came up was, will there be a recording of this somewhere so I can rewatch it?
Absolutely.
The answer
We're
is
recording
yes.
right now.
Yep, and we'll show you where to get that just before we jump off this call today. So
all right,
cool.
Let me head back to the.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to jump to this deck. And so again, I know I already mentioned this already a little bit, but so tomorrow is the advanced session. And with the advanced session, oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong time listed here. It's 12
to 1.
My apologies. I'm so sorry. This was the old time that we used to have. So tomorrow, May 31st, from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern time. So sorry. The invite is correct. That has gone out if you've signed up for that already, but I apologize that I have that wrong here. So the goal of tomorrow is to take the next step. So the foundational sessions will be about learning the Insight Suite and how to use it. And the advanced sessions will be about how to create, how to apply that knowledge. How do you create value out of it? And so we're going to walk through with Enza Chiodi from McDonald Media. We're going to walk through a real life, quote unquote, real life use case, just from an agency's perspective. So again, how do you use the Insight Suite to filter down the inventory? How do you use the Insight Suite to really hone in on a particular audience that's really important for a client, and if they have a primary audience and a secondary audience, how do you balance all that and today with the Insight Suite? So I think it's going to be a really good session. There'll be a lot of Q&A with that session tomorrow as well, and we'll walk you through how you do all that. The other thing I want to talk about is our next Data Talks webinar. So we have a whole nother series of webinars that we do around Data Talks. And what we want to talk about is how have the Geopath insights evolved? So how are impressions evolving given the new data we have in here? And if you were at the conference, we've talked about this quite a bit, kind of detailed out how things were with the TAB ratings and how they're evolving with the Geopath Insight Suite ratings. So I wanted to do this for a greater audience. So Dylan, Mabin, and myself will be doing a webinar where we'll talk through all the detail of like how's the data change with traffic counts, with illumination, with pedestrian, with demographics. So we'll detail all the yesterday and today, and so everybody's aware of what's changing and how things are evolving. I think that's going to be a really interesting session. That's going to be on Tuesday, June 18th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. We'll start sending out invites, our announcements in our newsletter starting next week about that as well. And then also, we're going to be doing these monthly. We'll continue doing these monthly, and with this similar breakout as foundational level and advanced level trainings throughout the rest of the year, because we want to make sure everybody's feeling comfortable with the Insight Suite and understanding how to use it, and we're answering any questions right along the way. And then the last thing, in case you missed it or missed any of our other webinars, this is an easy place to go find them. So this is a screenshot of our website. So you could just go to geopath.org and go to the Geek Out tab. You can see that's what's highlighted in gray. And just scroll down to Out of Home Office Hours. And you'll see all of our most recent webinars there. And you can also click where it says right here, click here to go to our YouTube channel that has all of our webinars there. And another place to find all of these also is in our Geek Out library as well. They're all housed in our training section as well. If you have any questions that you didn't think of, or have other questions that come up as you're going through your day, please reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. That's a great area, a great place to get your questions answered and get any help you need. So again, I want to thank so many people for joining today. We had a really, really great number of people join. I think our biggest yet. So please, please keep joining and keep asking us questions. We're happy to answer them. I just want to say thanks, everybody, and have a good day.